Finding great talent is harder than ever before. We're in a tight labour market at the moment, and we're seeing a supply-demand imbalance. So we are seeing that the demand for talent is actually greater than the supply of talent currently available on the market. 80% of leaders are saying that there's not enough candidates, and this is actually their biggest staffing concern at the moment. To win talent, our recruiters and our talent acquisition teams, they really need to bring their A game. So that's the great candidate experience, nurturing the strategic talent, and hiring for the future, not for just now. Have you ever been in this situation? You're filling roles as they arise and you feel like you're stuck on a treadmill and you're running and you're just not making that progress that you're after. And at the same time, you're finding that you're spending more on job boards and that the actual quality of the applicants that you're getting is stagnating. We're also seeing that there's an increase in the job spend that's happening on the job board. So people are spending more on job boards at the same time these applications are stagnating. And the other thing that we're finding when we speak to our candidates and when we speak to our customers is that candidates are now ghosting employees. So they're saying that they'll turn up for an interview and then they're a no-show. And then they're also ghosting before the first day of work. So they'll accept the position and then not turn up. So today we're going to talk about data-driven recruitment strategies that you can implement that will help you with building those pipelines of talent, using the channels that are most effective for you, and building the workforce that you need for the future, not just the now. But before we do that, we've said that the labour market has changed. So let's have a look at some of the trends that are shaping what we're seeing today. And the first is that we're seeing this diversions between the growth in job openings and the number of applicants on the market. So our data is showing, and the blue line is the top one, which is the growth in job openings. It is up 76% at the end of the last quarter compared to pre-COVID levels. Whereas in contrast, when we're looking at the number of applications that are on the market, or the number of applicants per role, it's down 7%. Now, why is this happening? Well, there's a few reasons. One is that COVID has really impacted people. And so they're really thinking about, is now the right time to join a new organisation? Obviously, our vaccine rollout is still far from complete. And we're also seeing that people are wondering about, well, given the economic conditions are uncertain, do I really want to move at this point? The second is that our borders are closed. Our international borders are closed, so we're seeing less of those skilled and unskilled migrants who would have applied for these positions traditionally. And our state borders are closed, so it's impeding that flow of skilled candidates around the country. The third thing we're seeing is that stagnation in wages over the last 12 months has really impacted, because one of the main motivators, as we all know, a main motivator for changing roles is remuneration. And then the final thing is, during COVID, many people have taken that step back to consider, well, what is it that I want to do with my career? And, what does work-life balance look like for me? The second thing we're seeing is an increase in the recruiter workload. So throughout COVID, many organisations ended up with much leaner talent acquisition teams than they had prior to COVID. So recruiters are now need to do more with less, recruit faster. And what this chart shows is that the average number of open positions that recruiters are covering, prior to COVID in ANZ, it was 18. And now it's at 23, which means there's been a 27% increase in workload. So at a time when there are less quality applicants on the market, recruiters are needing to fill more positions than they have historically. To exacerbate this, we're seeing a decrease in our offer acceptance rate. So your offer acceptance rate is, for every offer you make, what proportion of people say no? So with an offer acceptance rate of 97%, which is where it's at in 2019, for every 100 offers, 97 people said yes and 3 people said no. We've seen that fall to 95% through COVID, which means every time you make an offer, the chances that the candidate will turn you down has increased by 67%. And why is this happening? Well, what we've found is that for 63% of candidates, they say if they had a bad experience through the recruitment process, then they wouldn't accept the offer. So at a time when we have leaner recruitment teams, we are asking our recruiters and our hiring managers to really up the ante in making sure that they are creating and maintaining that really amazing candidate experience throughout the journey. And then the fourth trend we're seeing is what we're calling the Great Resignation boom. And many of you will have heard about this. It's hitting the press a lot. So after prioritizing job security, talent is now prioritizing career and life goals. And the Great Resignation boom is upon us. So currently we're seeing 38% of Australian workers plan to look for a new job in the next 12 months. And an additional 39% say they are open to new job opportunities. That's the majority of the workforce. Faced with going back to work in the office, and I should say going back to the office because obviously we have been working throughout this time, even though we've been home. Faced with giving up the flexibility of work from home, 34% said that they would look for a new role. And recent research has found that there's a shift in the mindset with our top talent. So the idea of flexible workforce for 75%, it's moved from being a negotiated perk to an expected right. But it's not all bad news. With more people resigning, that obviously means that there's more talent on the market. And this creates opportunities for organisations that are quick enough to snap up the talent and strategic enough to retain the top talent. So how can you capitalise on this available talent? Today we're going to discuss 3 strategies that leading organisations are harnessing to tackle these challenges. And Belle is going to share with us her wealth of experience and walk us through some of the strategies that Bendigo and Adelaide Bank has implemented. So starting with strategy 1, which is explore alternative sourcing channels. So it's a brave new world of work, and old strategies may no longer be enough. You cannot assume that talent will find you. Candidates discover your organisation through a number of different channels, such as your career website and through social media, through word of mouth, through review sites. So you've got to look beyond the job boards. Speaking with our customers and looking at the data, we can see that the days of posting on job boards and then being flooded with applications is over. Over the last 2 years, some job boards have increased their prices by more than 300%. And at the same time, the performance of the job ads is decreasing. So you're getting less quality applicants for an increased spend. So you may still be getting the volume, but we all know it's not about the volume, it's actually about the quality of those candidates. So this has led organisations to think about the cost, to focus on the cost, to take that step back and say, well, what are the alternative channels that I could be using, and what's the value of these channels? So I would challenge and ask all of you to think about, are you measuring the return on investment of your job boards? How does it stack up against the other channels? But that brings us to the question of, well, what are the alternatives and how do they compare to job boards? Let's start with a definition. So when I talk about effectiveness, what we're talking about is how many applications are required to secure one hire. So on average, if we're looking at job boards, it takes 46 applications to secure one hire. And this ranges between industries, and it also and even within companies within an industry, we will see a wide variation. And so for some organisations, this is in excess of 100. When you look at then comparing it to other sourcing channels, for example, such as your career site, you can see that it's a much more effective channel. 26 applications to hire one person. And this is also a very important channel because over 50%, nearly 60% of candidates will go to your career site to find out more about your organisation before they even apply. More effective channels, or much more effective channels, we've found when we look across the data set of industries and regions, are internal mobility and referrals. So internal mobility is the movement of your people, your current talent, in what we would call lateral moves. So it's not just the usual or the traditional vertical move, it's interdepartmental moves across functional projects. Referrals are also a very effective sourcing channel with 5 applicants per hire. And then the most effective is talent pipelines, also known as talent pooling. It's where you're using your CRM tools and recruitment marketing and proactively identifying, engaging and nurturing the talent so that it goes to being a proactive approach to filling roles rather than reactive. So Bel, ask you, are you tracking the effectiveness of these sourcing channels?
Absolutely. So one of the things about Bendigo and Adelaide Bank is our recruitment function's only about 3 years old. Previously, all the hiring was done in the individual divisions. And we've had PageUp since 2004. So that's meant that we've had quite a lot of messy data from being around for that long without having a proper function looking after it and having it all mandated. So going through and cleaning up sourcing channels, the application forms, processes and workflows, all of those boring but critical parts of the recruitment process has been really important in helping us to understand the state of play. And by cleaning up our sourcing data, we were able to see where our candidates were coming from, and not just where they're coming from, but where they're going throughout the candidate journey. So how many applicants are we getting per sourcing channel, but also how many interviews are we doing per sourcing channel? How many offers are being accepted or made by channel, so we can see what's working and what's not. And making sure that the team are using consistent ways of using the statuses in PageUp has meant that we're actually able to compare apples with apples where we weren't before. And we can see that the effectiveness of our job boards was 106 last year, which was 70% of applications, but only 12% of our hires. So it wasn't really very effective, and it had a huge number of applications for our team to wade through, which, considering the volume of work, just they don't have the time to do that anymore. We've nearly doubled the effectiveness of that channel to 58 by reducing that reliance on job boards and increasing our other channels as well. And making sure that we're focusing not on volume but quality is important as well. So, for instance, we know that most of our applications come from Seek, but definitely not most of our hires. We're able to see where the candidates are coming from at each stage of their journey.
And that's a really important call out where you said there's that trade-off between volume and quality. So it's not just about the volume, it's actually around the quality. So let's have a look at where the applications come from and where the hires, so to see if there are channels that are underutilized. So this chart is, again, the aggregate data rather than Bendigo and Adelaide Bank's data. So Belle will talk us through hers specifically, but in aggregate, this is what we're seeing. So job boards are 60% of the application. So overwhelmingly, most organisations receive the vast majority of applicants via job boards, and that's the dark blue. And when you look at the green, which is the hires, but in contrast, only 20% of the hires are coming through this channel. Compare that to your career website. So on average, 16% of applicants for 9% of the hires. So a much more effective channel. And then you can see the other 3 where they have larger percentages of hires are coming from things like your talent pipelines, and referrals and internal mobility. So talent pipelines accounts for 21% of hires. So that's your talent pipelines is your talent pipelines, talent pools, your CRM. So that proactive approach to recruitment. So Belle, are you seeing a similar trend at Bendigo and Adelaide Bank?
Yeah, definitely. Our recruitment team has never been busier. We've had a dramatic rise in the volume of roles this year, and it's meant that some of those proactive sourcing strategies had been put on the back burner as recruiters just struggled to keep up with the sharp increase in supply and demand. It meant that we started using our job boards much more than we had been, which increased our spend on job boards, but we weren't seeing the conversion there, and so we had to do some deep dives into whether or not the job boards were justifying the amount of money we were spending on them. So we've launched a new internal career site using recruitment marketing, which offers a significantly better candidate experience for our internals and focused on internal mobility. We've also done heaps of research into our EVP. Flexibility is one of our key pillars in EVP, but of course with COVID now that's just a given. So making sure that the EVP is still relevant, still speaks to the market, and understanding kind of what people are looking for. So we've been doing some work in developing personas of candidates across the organisation and looking at where we can target them and who they are and what they're interested in, what their deal breakers are, etc., so that we can be more proactive and targeted about finding talent and not just post and pray or post and spray multiple job ads like the team had been doing.
Yeah, that brings it really nicely to our second strategy. So it's about, where are you marketing and how are you marketing? So our second strategy is we're seeing is that hiring teams are adopting recruitment marketing. So for those of you who aren't familiar with this concept, it's where recruiters think like marketeers to attract the talent that they're after. So talent doesn't just exist on talent boards and on job boards. People find your organization through career sites, through review sites, through word of mouth, and through social media. So you need to be thinking like a marketeer and putting your best foot forward across all of these channels. And the aim is to move from fishing in the same talent pool as everyone else to proactively attracting the talent. So hiring teams are looking to engage talent with content such as blogs, videos, and personalized job recommendations. And it's about creating that personalized candidate experience from the first interaction that they have with your company to the first day on the job. So when we think like a marketeer, you need to think about the full candidate journey, and it has 4 parts, which is attraction, engagement, nurture, and conversion. So conversion, when we're talking in recruitment marketing speak, is when somebody applies for the role. So this is the attraction piece rather than the active recruitment funnel piece. So Bal, I know recruitment marketing is an area you're focusing on. Why is it so important?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been critical for us. We've got a large amount of transformation happening across the bank, and in particular, business units have been going through major transformations. So we've used recruitment marketing to build out specific landing pages for some of those business areas and really sell the transformation that they're going through. So not just why we're going out with so many roles at once, but also what the vision is and why we're doing those changes and what the story is, so that we can really sell not just in externals, but internals on the vision and the reasons behind the transformation itself. And that's been really successful for us.
And what data are you tracking then to measure the success of your recruitment marketing efforts?
Yeah, so we've been looking at the conversion rates across the landing pages. So we had one for a small business unit that, for instance, got 930 visitors to the page, and we can see that there were 98 potential candidates from those visitors, and 66 of those started applications. So it's been really successful, but you can tell that it's a funnel that definitely gets narrower as you go along. But it gives us the data so we can see where they've dropped out in that journey and what content they've been looking at and how long they've been spending on each part of content as well. And we've been using that data and other pieces of data from the organisation and research to build out a baseline of what's working and what's not, and using that and aggregates of other data, as much data as we can, to build out those candidate profiles and really get to know the candidates and what they're interested in, what their journey looks like across that whole life cycle, and building out editorial calendars that map to that, to make sure that we've got that coverage of EVP across our social channels and making sure it's telling a really consistent story and profiling our employees as well.
So I imagine there are a lot of different personas within your organisation. Did you start with a particular set or role?
Absolutely. So yes, there's a lot, and these are definitely still a work in progress. We're definitely not finished with them. We're still going, but we started with our retail and our technology areas because that's where we've got the volume and the difficulty in hiring. So they're where we focused on first. And one persona, for instance, that we built out was for an agri-business banking role. And the persona is someone that likes Great Danes. They love nature and hiking. They've got a family and are very involved in the community. And they're a natural leader, even when their co-workers sometimes wish they weren't. But using that level of detail and to understand the person, you can start to think about, okay, well, why is that person wanting to go for this role? What's attracting them? What are their deal breakers? Is it work-life balance? Are they looking for the next step up in their career? And it helps you think about things differently and make sure that you've got that content across the life cycle that really speaks to that particular persona.
And I imagine that's really helpful with the hiring managers because it's putting like more of a human face on these personas.
Absolutely. I know that I find that a lot of my hiring managers just seem to think that the selling points of the role are the day-to-day kind of activities that the person will be doing. And that's a big part of it, but there's so many intangible things that sell into what makes someone want to work with you or not. So they're missing out on a lot of opportunity by just focusing on the PD.
Yeah, and incredibly important at this time because we can see with the trends in the market that people are really looking for, they're not even calling it work-life balance anymore. It's about the whole self and that you can be your best self at work and that you enjoy your job and the flexibility in what you're doing. So in terms of, let's have a look at how this works in practice. This is an example of Bendigo and Adelaide Bank's site, and they're using recruitment marketing to amplify their employer brand and appeal to their target talent segments. So Belle was just talking about EVPs and that there are different personas and roles. So EVPs for each of these different types of categories. They're highlighting videos, resources, and opportunities to the prospective talent, and they're ensuring that each engagement that the visitor has with the website is positive so that it moves them further down the recruitment marketing funnel. Belle, can you talk a little bit more about how you're using your career site to really market to the potential hires?
Yeah, so this is where the personas come in really handy. So we've built out our editorial calendar based on the candidate personas and the opportunities we've identified throughout their journey of ways we can communicate with them the kind of content that they're interested in, what's actually going to help them from their perspective, not just selling them job ads. So we've also built out employee ambassador program where we've gone out to our employees and encouraged them to come along to things like photo shoots and to get in touch with us to share their story on social media, and undertaken quite a lot of competitor analysis as well, where we've been looking at not just the banking sector, but also competitors in other organisations as well to understand what their propositions are and how we're different from them and where we can position ourselves differently. And understanding candidate experience for them as well. So going through, I've got a pseudonym resume where I apply for jobs as well. Just to understand what the candidate experience is like for other people.
And I really love this story. So are you one of those like unsuitable applicants that your competitors are having to screen out?
Absolutely. For someone who's only ever worked in hospitality, Sarah definitely has very high expectations of salary.
And do you have any other tips then for our audience?
Yeah, capture people's details through as many call to actions as you can. We link those call to actions to talent pooling functionality in the back end and can use that to segment them. So we can see them as, really hot talent or ones that are a great future but kind of need to grow a little bit before they're ready, those kind of things.
All right, so that brings us to our third and our final strategy, which is take a holistic view of talent. So traditionally, HR teams have thought of the talent journey as linear. So we go externally into the market and we recruit somebody, we onboard them, we develop them, and then when it's time for them to leave, we show them the door and we say, thank you very much and goodbye. Nowadays, the talent life cycle can look more circular. So ex-employees can be brought back on board and internal talent can fill the skill gaps. And many organisations at the moment are looking to rebuild their workforce after COVID, and they're operating in a very competitive market with limited budgets. So taking a holistic view of talent that incorporates internal employees and ex-employees, which is also known as alumni, is incredibly positive. Because the reason it's positive is that, the alumni speed to competency is far greater than a new hire. And so with so many great people having been stood down or laid off during COVID, there's plenty of ex-employees that are willing to be re-engaged and brought back on board. Embracing internal mobility provides a source of quality, pre-vetted talent that is already culturally aligned to your organisation. It's also really important in terms of retention, because if you're able to give your current employees opportunities to move into a lateral position, move horizontally rather than vertically, that will help you retain them. And when we were talking about sourcing channel effectiveness before, we looked at internal mobility, and it is consistently one of the most effective hiring channels, sourcing channels, with 1 out of 5 applicants being hired. So today we're going to showcase how to build an internal network to accelerate internal mobility, but the approach is similar if you're also looking to build one for ex-employees or alumni. So internal mobility boosts retention and it cuts costs. And research shows us that employees who are promoted within 3 years of being hired have a 70% chance of staying, and employees who have made a lateral move have a 62% chance of staying. So how do you do this? Look at building a dedicated internal mobility microsite or landing page and showcase available roles, because often your current staff, they don't know what roles are available, especially if it's outside the department. And feature career paths and stories from other employees. So understanding what a non-traditional career path can look like in terms of an interdepartmental move is incredibly important. The other thing to do is look at how you support your people to take advantage of internal opportunities. If they've been with your organisation for a while, they may not know how to put together a resume or how to interview well. They may not understand the terminology that you're using because it's terminology out in market and you use different terminology within your organisation. So reducing the friction points for your internal employees will make a difference. So Bel, how are you working with your team to develop an internal mobility strategy?
Yeah, so we did launch the internal career site, which you can see on the screen at the moment, and have been using that to build out things like our employee ambassador program, which is asking our employees to be involved in things like photo shoots and employee profiles, and linking the internal career site with our capability framework across the bank as well. And profiling success stories where people have been laterally moved or across the organisation. So not just vertical career progression, but the interdepartmental progression. For instance, we had a successful candidate who was working in one of our branches recently that's moved into a position in STEM, and a woman in STEM as well at that, which is even harder. So the fact that that's working really well and the candidate's being really successful in her new role is really encouraging other people to think about it and open their, be more open-minded about doing the same thing and trying other people.
So banking is fairly stereotypically male-dominated field. And so are you seeing some success stories from horizontal moves between your departments?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, diversity of thought is so important, and making sure people come from different backgrounds and different business units is critical in that. And I certainly didn't have a traditional career progression into recruitment. I came via an IT degree and web development, via publishing, and then market research as well. And it's given me heaps of perspective on different organisations and different areas and think about things in a different way. And I think that's really important. And I think for us, we've got a woman MD and a woman chairman of the board as well. And we've had some really great success stories in moving women across from different areas of the business. For instance, our Chief Information Security Officer, Shannon, is a woman who's moved into that role via risk and consulting. So we've got some really high-profile success stories that are exciting to see.
And organisations often face challenges with creating successful internal mobility programs. So what have you done to help overcome some of these challenges?
Yeah, so we're working with our organisational capability and design team to really increase the links between our internal career site and also our performance management as well, and linking that, like I said, to the capability framework, so we can get a better understanding of where our skill gaps are across the organisation and areas where we've got that potential for candidates to move across it really easily and seamlessly because they've got those capabilities that we know that we need in those areas. And we're starting to see some really great traction in candidates thriving in roles that they traditionally wouldn't have gotten. So the appetite starts to increase the more that those stories get told and profiled and shared and celebrated.
Absolutely. So understanding someone else does it shows that you can do it too. And so that brings us to our final takeaways, which is, it's not enough to rely on your same old strategies. You need to look at, well, what are your alternate sourcing channels? We took you through some today, but understanding what works for your organisation and where are you getting the best return on investment. The second is think like a marketeer. The supply for candidates is less than the current demand. So you really need to showcase why they should be working for you, what's your unique selling points, and making sure that you are consistent with that branding across all interactions the candidates have with you before the recruitment process and then during the recruitment process. And then the third one is take a holistic view of talent that is including your internal networks. You're sitting on a gold mine of talent within your current organisation, so look at how you can utilise it. So to finish up, Bal, if you were giving someone starting their EVP or recruitment marketing journey some advice, what would that piece of advice be?
Yeah, there's so many strategies you can adopt, but take it bit by bit, don't get overwhelmed, and work out kind of what the key priority areas that you need to focus on first and what's going to give you the biggest bang for your buck. You need to get a really good foundation of where you're at to understand where you want to be and how to get there as well. And being honest about the journey, don't try and pretend that you're at the end goal when you're really not, because that's just going to lead to a world of pain. So make sure that you're bringing people along with you for the journey and they understand where you're at and where you're going to get to one day. And you can't do everything at once. It's not a race. So just pick out what you can and that's going to be the most impactful and work on that. And appreciate the journey and not the destination, because there is no destination. There's always more to do.
There's always more to do. Thank you very much.
Terrific. Belinda, we've got a couple of questions here for you, but just in the interest of time, are you able to hang around till the round table at 11:10 or come back on for that?
I think I might have a meeting at 11:10.
No, that's okay. There's a couple of quick questions around does the bank have and how have you measured the impact of a maturing talent function to business results?
Yeah, so an alumni function is something that we're working on. That's on our list. Like I say, we're a fairly new function and I've only been at the bank since January of this year. So there's a lot of work to do and I'm the only employer brand at Bendigo Bank. So yeah, there's a lot happening and a lot of different things happening. And sorry, what was the second question?
About measuring the impact of a maturing talent function to business results. But I'm thinking if you're so new, you might not be quite accurate.
Yeah, so this is definitely something we're working on, but we're not there yet because, like I say, it's just getting a sense of where the baseline is and we're understanding those metrics. So getting the understanding of like things like how many interviews people are doing, are they successful interviews, how many candidates are unsuccessful, so is the screening appropriate, those kinds of things. But we're definitely building out those baselines at the moment.
And I think we will have you back at the end of next year and see where you're at with that.
Hopefully there'll be a lot of development.
see how see the movement.
Thank you both very much for that. The insights were amazing, and as always, I love hearing exactly what an internal talent acquisition person is doing. So I thank you so much for your presentation. So what I'm going to get you to do is turn your screens off, your cameras off, and stop sharing your screen. Rebecca, thank you. And I'm going to